Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer podcast. But dude, this is bringing me back to the OG days of me running the podcast where I had everybody on here and they weren't doxxed. And so we'll get into that in a second. But for people who don't know who you are, can you give a brief intro to yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I'm TG3. I'm the CEO of SolCasino. I'm also a lawyer. I have a law practice in Brooklyn. I do regulatory compliance and corporate structuring for crypto companies and small businesses. And before I was in the legal industry, I was a banker. And before that, I was a rugby player.
There we go. Yeah, I can confirm you're a big ass dude. So I could easily see you wrecking some people on the rugby field.
Yeah,
that'd be me. I'd get trucked in that situation.
Hey, there's a position for every size.
There we go. Okay, so let's talk about the doxing for a second. So, when I first started the podcast, pretty much everybody was non-doxed at that point, and then I can't remember exactly when that was, but at some point in 2022, Frank was doxxed and against his will. And so it seemed like after that, pretty much everybody doxed in the space. It felt like all of a sudden, we were used to everybody walking around masked up, and all of a sudden it seemed like people just started, posting their faces and posting their families and things like that. And in some ways, I do think that's actually a good thing. I think it's a good thing that we build more trust in this space, because I think it's important for somebody who's on the outside to look at us and look at what we're doing and have it look more normal, and the non-doxed aspect of things is hard for somebody from the outside to look at it and go like, oh, okay, that looks, trustworthy, right?
Absolutely.
But I wanted to give you a second to obviously address why you decided not to dox today, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So SolCasino is licensed and insured in Curacao. We do operate everything in a compliant manner. But Web3 casinos and crypto in general, here in the States is such a legal gray area. And we've seen today, even with the kind of Binance SEC complaint that they received, that, there's been opaque and very vague guidance provided by the SEC and the regulators. And, until then, I'm just going to cover my ass with this. I'm a pretty public person. I'm doxxed to a lot of people that I do business with regularly. If you've been on a call with me, you see my face, even if your camera wasn't on. And I go to all these events. So if you see me pull up an event, come and say what's up. I won't be wearing this mask. But until we are provided with a little more clarity from the regulators, I'm definitely going to take measures to protect myself.
Yeah, and totally fair. And that was something you and I chatted about this a few days ago.
Yeah.
So I knew your answer to this question ahead of time. But, we had chatted about this, and I said, I was like, yeah, I understand the position that you're in, that you guys are running the casino, and it is a legal gray area. And so, it's until you have, the rules to follow, it's hard to know what you should or should not do. And so, therefore, covering your ass in this situation, totally understand that. And so let's, I guess, talk about that real quick for, the news today, which for people who are watching this, we're running this podcast on Monday, June 5th, I believe it is. Yep. And so today's been a crazy day. We started off the day with the SEC case against Binance. And then right after that, we had the Apple keynote speech. And so the timeline went from everybody crying about the, Binance and the SEC and everything like that, to all of a sudden people in euphoria over this Apple keynote speech and this AR headset and all these different things that Apple's announcing, the new MacBooks and everything along those lines. So how did you interpret the news of today, the SEC case against Binance and then the Apple keynote from there?
Yeah, so the SEC case against Binance, it's the initial complaint, right? I think the market overreacted a little bit. When you look at what the SEC is charging Binance with, is selling unregistered securities. The securities analysis that they provided in there is really directly against some of the other guidance they provided around Ethereum, some of these other bigger coins that have been kind of through the system and litigated a little bit. But yeah, I think it's just some people jumping the gun a little bit of a market overreaction. And then like if Binance US is in trouble, like that's such a small slice of Binance that I really think they're either going to settle or they're going to pay the fee really before it gets dragged out. It's kind of where that's my prediction on it.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it too. It's like, you know, and we've talked about this, but like regulation is something. It is coming. Like it is in the U.S. You are not the wild west of the crypto days. It's over with. Like the reality of it is the U.S. is not going to just allow people to do whatever the hell they want to do, right? Yeah. Like there is going to be regulation, and to me, I don't look at that as a bad thing. It's good to know what rules that we can operate within, because that also increases the legitimacy of the crypto space in general, right? And
couldn't agree more.
And we've seen, you know, in the last few years, it feels like the crypto space has had some positive headlines, and you started to see it kind of normalized in terms of like, you know, different apps that you could buy and sell cryptocurrency on, and you were seeing ads for, you know, big cryptocurrency companies and things like that. And then as we're, you know, doing really well, all of a sudden we have the FTX, you know, issue. We have this Celsius issue. We have all these different big ass like, black swan events that have occurred that are such a black eye for the industry. And it's like, so to me, when I think about regulation, I'm like, okay, in theory, regulation should lead to rules that we know to operate within, which means we should have, in theory, less of these black swan events, right? And so to me, I'm like, when I think about what is going to cause the average person to get into cryptocurrency, they want that trust. They want that security. They want that sort of regulation. And so I feel like in order for us to get to the point, when we talk about onboarding normies and expanding this whole industry and everything like that, we need those people because, you know, you're not going to have millions and millions and millions of people that are using cryptocurrency all because of like the idea of decentralization. Like it's just, that's not going to be the thing that gets, you know, millions and millions and millions of people. So we need to increase the trust with the average person. And so every time we see one of these big black swan events, that average person goes, I don't want to touch it, right? So we need less of those events to occur. And the way to do that is to have more regulation so that people know what rules they can operate within, especially in the U.S. And then, you know, and if people want to go do the crazy shit, then go to another country. Like, you know, you don't have to, you know, if you want to, that goes with pretty much everything. Like the U.S. has always been kind of like, you know, we're a little bit more conservative than what we allow. But if people want to go run rampant, there's plenty of countries that you can go and do that in.
Agreed. And I agree with your point. I welcome regulators wholeheartedly. I think there's a lot of brands and businesses, big money people who are waiting to get into the space. They're eager to get into the space. They have the tech. It makes sense from a product market fit for the offerings that they have. But they don't want to jump in and end up fucking themselves, right? By being non-compliant or not being able to follow this kind of opaque or this gray guidance that's provided by regulators. And that's just like an education thing at the end of the day too, and a consumer protection thing. So until then, I do think we're going to see brands and businesses either dip their toes in different ways and, you know, not necessarily go all in on Web3 until they're provided this regulatory clarity and that their legal teams completely sign off everything, which is not an easy thing to ask for like a conglomerate or multi-billion-dollar business, which are the groups you want to bring into Web3, right? Because that's going to onboard. And we've seen this with like Starbucks is just like a glaring example of them introducing, like if they introduced half of the people that shop at Starbucks, we blow the whole crypto system wide open, right? It's more participants than we've ever seen. And these are the necessary steps to achieving mass adoption that are currently being blocked by like regulatory uncertainty.
100%. And even, you know, right after all of that, so we started off the morning with that news, right? And then we went right into the Apple keynote and Apple announcing this new AR headset, which I think people are very, very excited about. And the way I look at it is, you know, when I'm watching this keynote, I'm like, I'm imagining if Apple was announcing something with the blockchain, right? Whether it's some sort of wallet, you know, compatibility, or whether it's their own blockchain, or, you know, whatever. You know, when I think about what Apple could do with crypto and Web3, it's like, it's mind blowing to think about taking the geniuses that they have over at Apple and then taking all the innovative ideas that we've already created in Web3 and thinking about how Apple could innovate on top of that. That gets me so beyond excited, but it goes back into what we just talked about a second ago of, I don't think Apple's going to do that until we have more of this regulation, because they're not going to put the capital and the time and the energy into Web3 and into, you know, blockchain technology until they know what rules that they can operate within. And so to me, I'm like, man, you know, once again, if we want to really get to the point of this being massively adopted and everything like that, we need that regulation so these massive companies can come in, build really, really cool things with the tech, and all of a sudden now blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, and everything like that becomes a household name. Other, you know, normies start to understand it because companies like Apple will make it simple for everybody.
Absolutely.
And that's the part that I look forward to is like, there's so many new, ways that like, Apple was announcing today, like different NFC technology that they're doing and different things with AR and stuff like that. And the best thing that they do is they simplify everything so that the average person just goes, okay, I see how that can better my life, right? And thinking about what they could do with the blockchain and crypto and everything like that, man, oh my God, it just gets me very excited.
Yeah, me too. I'm stoked about the kind of the future of this industry. And, I get a lot of questions from folks that are either kind of dipping their toes in NFTs or they're kind of getting involved. They want to say like, hey, like, do you think NFTs are going to be around in 10 years? I think yeah, absolutely. I think NFTs are going to be here. I think blockchain tech is going to be here. It's not going to look the way it does today. And that's probably for the best, right? We've even seen like some brands come in and start calling NFTs digital collectibles because crypto and NFT is kind of like a dirty word in some jurisdictions here in the States. Which leads to like a direct lack of education for the consumer, which leads to people end up buying things because their friends tell them to, or they see it on social media and they get rugged, right? I mean, it's a huge problem for the space. That starts with education, but until we're able to get there, yeah, I do think we'll see. And I'm not gonna like name drop any specific blockchains or any specific projects, but we're even seeing like engineers from these big groups, these big tech groups, go off and start their own kind of blockchains or start their own projects, and they are very much affiliated with the big tech companies, but at arm's length. It's essentially a compliance firewall. So we get the same talent working on the same stuff. I like thinking of like a testing grounds, and we've seen that with a couple of these blockchains come out, which is super interesting. But yeah, Apple's not going to miss when they roll this out. They're definitely interested in doing it. Like kind of all the signs are pointing towards Apple introducing something like this. But yeah, until there's more certainty, probably going to sleep on it.
100%. So now before we dive into SolCasino and everything that you guys are doing, I want to kind of, you've been in the crypto space for a really long time. So can you talk to me about what was your background? How did you get into crypto? How did you get into NFTs? All that kind of good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, to keep it a buck, my first exposure to Bitcoin was like in 2012 when it was $1, and like somebody was selling me weed was talking about, hey, buy Bitcoin. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to do it. Right. Then I started doing like, so I started working at a Japanese bank, was doing FX stuff for a little bit, kind of worked my way up into an analyst position, doing derivative work, mostly corporate banking, client stuff. And then I started learning about cryptocurrency, just being in the financial space, right? And in New York, money's flowing, people are coming from all over the place. So you hear it kind of word of mouth stuff. Didn't really invest then, kind of dabbled, talked to the bank a little bit about it, kind of got laughed out of a couple meetings back in the day, right? This is early. Then I think around maybe 2016 is when I started buying. I was buying Ethereum. I was buying Bitcoin. I just started law school around there. So I was looking for a way to like, take some of my student loan money, invest a little bit. I threw like a big chunk at Bitcoin, was able to catch that kind of run up in 2017. Paid for my law school, paid for my living expenses. I thought that was a really nice win. But that really looped me in, right? That really hooked me into what it was. I didn't necessarily understand the value prop of cryptocurrency at first, but then kind of digging in and kind of seeing the communities that are being kind of built around this, the different tools, the different protocols being built, leveraging this blockchain technology. I think it started to click for me and make sense. Really, the light bulb moment for me absolutely was in law school, working on in property law. I had a classmate of mine who was a Liberian gentleman, and in property law, we have in the States, there's like a dual chain recording system, and a lot of stuff that can go wrong in these recording process. Anywhere from marking down the wrong dollar amount that it's sold for, the wrong address, the wrong names, and then there's different types of jurisdictions. And this is like getting a little technical, but some jurisdictions are race jurisdictions, some are notice jurisdictions, and it has to do with who's able to get to the courthouse fastest to sign off, or who is like, would a reasonable person who did a deed record search know that it was like transferred from party A to party B. This is an inefficient process and it's archaic, and it's something that blockchain solves. And so this Liberian gentleman I'm speaking of, his big thing was like dual chain recording systems in the States, like still better than what a lot of other countries have. He had experience where, he purchased property for his family. Like 6 months later, the courthouse was burned down. Then people came to his property with some guns and said, nah, this transaction never happened. This is our property now, right? And that's something that blockchain completely eliminates, that trust-based factor. It makes it so that it's publicly verifiable and it's stored in an immutable process like on-chain. And that's just one example, like real estate, like deed titles. I think that's really interesting. So that's something I was like, wow, this is crazy. Another one we saw is like car deed titles and stuff like that, and medical records and all this type of stuff. I really think those are very obvious use cases that are being stifled by lack of clarity. And then we're seeing different jurisdictions on the state level implement this type of stuff now, which is really interesting to me. Like Miami-Dade County is kind of looking into putting a lot of their processes on chain. I spoke with the cryptos down there, like about how they can incorporate blockchain technology into like the restaurant industry down there. I think it's really interesting use case. This was kind of how I got really introduced into not just speculatively investing in cryptocurrency, which anybody can do, but really just kind of digging deeper, being part of this larger community and this larger ecosystem to help drive it forward. And one of the regulatory things that I've seen, especially with the SEC, like when you look at the Howey tests, you look at the family resemblance tests, some of these securities tests that they apply, like these are from the early 1900s, and some of these concepts even come from common law, like British common law before, and it's like fitting a square peg into a circle hole, right? And when I noticed this and I saw this, and then I'm taking my securities classes in law school, and I'm like, wow, this doesn't make any sense for crypto. I immediately knew that this was a vertical I wanted to get in, because I knew that I could get in at the ground level of like a budding industry that I think has extreme upside over the next 10, 20, 50 years. And more so, I can help influence and impact the regulations that are provided around there by having like a early kind of boots on the ground view and mentality of what this should look like in an equitable sense. Because having these white shoe law firms and having these white shoe attorneys that are schooled on this 1923, or these 1920s regulations, doesn't do us any good, right? I mean, it's just one of the OG bull theses, I guess, behind cryptocurrency is, moving away from the existing banking system, right, and the existing financial system, because it is corrupt. There is inefficiencies, and there's a little too much room for like human impact and human error in those. And so, like, if we can start pushing towards that, and then the regulations around there can reflect properly what cryptocurrency does and should be used for, then I think we'll start to get somewhere. But until then, and they're going to keep applying these old laws, these archaic laws to like a new budding industry, it's only going to stifle innovation. And so, that's like a long way to answer that. That's when I found out about it, I got into it, and I decided to dig deep and really establish myself here in the industry, as a lawyer.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, I think it's like similar things to me when I thought about more use cases, like even just the like car insurance or the title to your car and things like that. Yeah. I'm like, it makes so much more sense for that to be on the blockchain. Like imagine if you get pulled over and you don't have to pull up your car insurance. It just gets, brought up right then and there, like your car registration, like all of that should just be done. Like just think about increasing efficiencies.
Absolutely.
It's like, just make life so much easier for everybody. Obviously we don't want to get pulled over, but hey, if I can speed up that process of getting pulled over, like much easier, right? And there was one time that I legitimately like forgot to put my car registration sticker on the back of my car, and so I got a fix-it ticket for that, and then I ended up having to go to 2 courthouses just to show that I had the right sticker on my car afterwards. And it's like all of that is just so dumb. And when you think about that whole process, it's like if all the cop had to do was scan my license plate and then it pulls up, on the blockchain that my car is registered and then it's properly insured and everything like that, could have avoided that entire headache, right? So things like that where I'm like, it just makes so much more sense for blockchain technology to help with things like that, because that's just such an archaic way of doing things, of having a flipping sticker on my car to show that my car is registered. Like how dumb is that?
Well, and Mark, for us, it's a headache, right? For some people, they need to take off a day of work and they have to use public transportation because they don't have a car to go, and then look, they can't miss a day of work and then they get fired, right? And this is like a equity, kind of transportation equity issue as well. But like there is all these inefficiencies have actual impacts on people's lives. And not everyone is like, and I admit that I'm definitely like blessed in my life that I'm like not being impacted by some of these stuff. I could take an afternoon off and go to the DMV if I need to. But that's simply not the case for a majority of people living in this country. And until we address that, there's always going to be this kind of social kind of inequity.
100%, 100%. So, and then how did you end up getting into NFTs from there?
Yeah, so I like, this guy that I met in law school, he actually dropped out of law school, found a job working for Flow, which is like for Block Party, which is a Flow blockchain application. They do NFT stuff. So I was introduced like super early there. I remember seeing CryptoPunks for a couple $100s and being like, I don't know why people are spending money on this. Like, didn't really understand the prop, right? The value prop. Then I saw them kind of increase in price, and I said, okay, like let me like look at this a little bit and kind of get more involved. Then I remember like the first ETH NFT wave where it was like the Bored Apes, Pudgies, like Gutter Cats, like some of these other like ETH blue chips. Like I was there, I minted and flipped all these things because I didn't understand the lasting power or the community lasting power, right? I thought, oh, I mint these things. Oh, cool. Like I went from $500 to $5,000. This is crazy. I'm selling, right? I just sold, got out. But then I started to see these communities being built, these IRL kind of events. Like at the time when I was minting these early ETH NFTs, I don't even have a Discord account, so I was just on Twitter. I was like, yeah, just trying to figure it out, word of mouth stuff. So then I saw that, and then, and I've been investing I'm one of the managers of a 501c7 private financial social club called Blacklist. Shout out to Blacklist. A lot of folks in the Solana ecosystem came from Blacklist. A lot of traditional investors, and it's not just a crypto thing. It's a financial literacy education kind of platform, social club. And then we also do some social events, and we're mostly folks based in New York or in the Northeast. But I've been advising them on their crypto asset investments and investment strategy since maybe 2018. And, we all bought Solana super early, right? Between 30 cent and $3 buyers, the majority of folks in there. And Solana made all the sense in the world for us from an equity use perspective, right? I love Ethereum more than the next guy, and as much as the next guy, and I love Bitcoin too, but it's not reasonable to think that people to pay higher transactions for this type of stuff. And then the high throughput, low fee makes a lot of sense for Apple Pay style coffee shop applications. And this little stuff is what normal people use in their day to day, and they don't want to wait 15 minutes to buy coffee or pay $10 in a transaction fee for it. So that was my initial thesis on Solana. I'm like, cool, this looks cool. Buyers. Obviously I knew about the NFTs. I saw monkeys, Solana Monkey DAO. And that was really the big one for a lot of people in Blacklist, right? A lot of folks minted, held a bunch, still holding a bunch, active members of the community, good community participants, and good participants in the ecosystem in general. Monkey DAO is, and from my legal background, I did a lot of work with early stage startups, do a lot of work kind of doing fundraising for these groups. But I also have a big focus on worker cooperatives. And, I wrote this thesis paper back in maybe 2018 called DAOs, the worker cooperatives of the future, right? I immediately saw such a big crossover from not only from a structuring, a legal structuring perspective from DAOs and worker cooperatives, but from a culture and community perspective. Everyone has a different role in this. If it's a proper DAO, everyone has a different role. They're working towards a common goal. And then everyone shares in the upside of that, right? And, monkeys, I was like, oh, it's a cute monkey, we'll buy it or whatever. Then when I heard they were coming out with a DAO, I'm like, let's go. I love DAOs. This is something I'm super interested in. And, I was part of the first, structuring board for the DAO. So that was really interesting for me. And, I'm also part of the Lex DAO, which is a decentralized legal engineering guild based on Ethereum, and put a lot of focus into proper DAO structuring because it goes a long way for groups. And, most of these DAOs, they don't even need NFTs. You could be a payment subscription thing, pay once a year. A bunch of different ways to set it up. But, the DAO aspect was fascinating to me. So I stuck around in the Monkey DAO for a little while, and from there kind of branched out into a bunch of these other Solana projects and met a lot of great people in the early Monkey DAO days. A lot of them ended up working for the Solana Foundation or going to start protocols or marketplaces. And, it's been a great experience so far, especially on Solana. I feel the people here are, very welcoming. Very fun, like to have a lot of fun, which is great. That's my big, I'm a silly maxer, right? My big bull thesis is we log on, we have fun with people that we're friends with, and we win every day. And that's what it should be. And I found that on Solana. I thought that was really cool. So I guess that's kind of the long and short of my NFT journey, how I got into it. But, it's been a hell of a ride so far.
Yeah, no, it's always fun. And it really is when I think about, the crypto Black Swan events that we've had in the last, 4 or 5 years, right? Or even longer than that, the last 7 or 8 years, when you were in just crypto, itself, there was really no community aspect of it. And it's just so much better now how we're able to kind of lift each other up when there is a tough morning like today. It's so much easier to just be in a negative mindset after reading news like that. But then now that we are so much more active in Discord and on Twitter and on YouTube and things like that, you're able to hear these sort of conversations, or you're able to go on Twitter and hear a Twitter space, or, tweet, somebody puts out a thread breaking down the announcement and kind of why you shouldn't be that concerned about it. And it calms people down way more, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think about that aspect of NFTs and just kind of the community aspect of it, and the, the knowledge sharing aspect of it, of how many more people are helping educate other people and, helping show them different ways to look at certain news and things like that. And it's just, it makes me that much more bullish on this entire thing because, those bearish months that we used to experience back in 2018, 2019, when it came to crypto, you didn't really have anybody to rely on back then. It was there were groups, but they just weren't as it almost feels like a family now. Those were people that you were, trying to get alpha from and things like that. But I don't feel like people really like met up back then. It wasn't like now there's like people are legitimately, I mean, you mentioned to me right before you came over here, you're like, yeah, I got to meet up with some people in LA that I've known for a long time through this space that I'm now actually getting to meet in person and have a conversation with and things like that. And it's like, that's one of my favorite aspects of the NFT space, always will be. I've always enjoyed these conversations, and like you and I getting a beer the other night and just getting to know each other before we do the podcast. Like absolutely. That's the sort of stuff I love. And I think that's what makes the NFT space so special.
For sure. We're all brought together by a shared interest, but we all have such diverse perspectives. And, folks come from all different walks of life, different education levels, colors, creeds, and this all provides like a really nice kind of mosaic of kind of outlook towards the space, right? And I was in the SolCasino server this morning, and folks, they don't understand the legal process. Talk about, are we done? Are we dead? I'm like, yeah, top's in, everyone's going to die. Like, no, this is just a complaint, kind of early stage here. And I was explaining how the legal process works here in the States, like from the SEC's perspective. And this, like, hopefully that information goes and kind of helps calm some people down or is able to disseminate properly. It's not a non-issue, but it is an overreaction. And having that viewpoint, having that perspective, also seeing this happen a few times before, kind of been through the ringer in that regard. Just being able to connect with other folks and kind of have that knowledge share. So clutch.
100%. So speaking of knowledge, obviously you've been in the space for a long time. And so before you decided to come out with SolCasino and everything like that, and we'll dive more into that in a second, but the overall NFT space, obviously you've been able to see a lot of projects that have become very successful. You've seen a lot of projects that have kind of, gained that hype and then fallen off over time. What do you think is the biggest indicator that you look for the success of an NFT project?
I think you invest in people, not projects, right? It's really easy. Like there's a term that I use, and it's called the fish rots from the head down. It's normally a negative thing where it's like, oh, if there's a corrupt governor or a corrupt person who's running the project, it's going to trickle down. But I think the inverse is also correct, where if you have somebody that is a founder that has that drive, that passion, that shows up every day and participates in the ecosystem from like an enjoyer's perspective, and they're motivated by things that aside from money, like there's a ton of like everyone's in here to make money, but when you make money the focus of your culture and your community, you end up with no culture, no community, and no money. And so having like other type of motivators outside of that, and whether that be doing something for the greater good or doing something for your people or even just anything aside from money is what I look at. I don't like greedy founders, because at the end of the day, this is a space where we should be able to help each other and uplift each other, and especially as a founder, and so I would just always invest in people more than anything. And then obviously products that make sense. Like some products just don't make any sense, and you see like it doesn't need to be an NFT, or it's just not feasible. Like I remember seeing an NFT that was like a safe agreement equity, simple agreement for future equity NFT. And I'm like, well, if someone came to me with a company that didn't have any numbers, didn't have a product, and asked me to sign a safe agreement, I would not do that. So why would I do that in the Web3 space? So just like seeing that, kind of knowing these different grifts and scams, try to stay away from those. But yeah, it is a top-down thing. Founders first.
100%. So what do you think is the biggest mistake that you see other founders make? Even the ones with good intentions, the ones that, because I do think there are a lot of people that are building projects and they have the greatest intentions in the world, and sometimes it just doesn't pan out. Yep. Is there a mistake that you see them make that you're kind of like, I can kind of see why that didn't play out well? Overpromising
and under-delivering. If you continue to overpromise, no matter how good the product is that you deliver, you're always going to give your haters and your opposition like something to talk about, right? So, and I definitely move in silence. We would much rather do that with SolCasino and any of these projects that I'm in. I would rather see folks deliver good product, because that speaks for itself. So I do think that overpromising thing. And the other thing is, in the overpromising, promising unrealistic or unobtainable like things to your holders, right? There's just some things that aren't feasible, some things that don't make sense, and they sound great. But if you had experience in that industry, whether it's say like, and this is a completely random example, but like say that like they're trying to do it in a specific commodities, or they're trying to do it in a specific consumer industry where, it's for consumer product goods, right? If you don't have experience in the CPG industry, you're going to have trouble kind of scaling, right? And so in that regard, like promising things that you don't have tons of experience with, like learning is very difficult. IP stuff, I love IP projects. I love IP plays. I think it's such a good use case for NFTs, but building brands and building solid IP takes years. And without a founder that's ready to commit the next 5 years of his life to actively growing this project and brand every single day, they're not going to be successful in that IP creation. And we're seeing some folks that have been, and shout out to those projects. But that's just another thing where if you had worked in that before, if you kind of had experience in there before, you would understand what it takes to get there. And it's not a light lift. So I do think that's a common mistake.
What projects do you look at as like, these people got it? Like they have the right team, they have the right mindset, they've built the right community. Whether it's on ETH, whether it's on Solana, whether it's on Polygon, whatever different blockchain, which projects do you look at and you just say, yeah, these people got it?
Well, I think like the initial wave that I had spoke of about those ETH, kind of those quote unquote blue chips, all of those are like IP plays, right? None of them are really too technically savvy, but they still have a great holder base, great community, and the NFT value of them directly reflects their community, you know? So I think like all those guys, with regards to Solana, like D-Gods, I think are killing it. Clayno, I think are killing it right now. Sharky, I think they're killing it because they have a really interesting like protocol that generates profit. You know, I think these are important, like building actual tools and utilities that help benefit the ecosystem. Famous Fox devs, those guys are shipping everything left and right. Yeah, and there's just, I would say those are probably some of the standouts for me. Obviously, I like SolCasino, big fan. And then smaller alpha DAOs, I think are super important. And I'm part of the Hardy DAO. Shout out to those guys. Those guys are like incredible daily active participants. I think half of them are project owners themselves. And so everyone provides like a really unique standpoint. But, you know, there's also like the Umbras. There's also like the Enigmas. There's also like the Boogles. And for all the bad PR and press that they do get, the flip side of that is like they are a bunch of like-minded investors getting together and engaging with each other to help forward the space in one way or another. So I think those are important. But and the space wouldn't be the same without these people for sure. But yeah, from an ETH perspective, yeah, those guys also like Miladies a lot. I think Miladies did a great job of developing the community. That's another project that doesn't have like a money printer, that doesn't have like a lending protocol, that doesn't have any of these quote unquote Web3 utilities, but they do have culture. And culture, and we've seen this, culture supersedes almost all of these. And so yeah, shout out to them. It's just one of those things where if you're able to build a strong base of like-minded holders, then they're able to build on top of each other and leverage each other's skills to build something really special, whether that's like offshoot brands and businesses, whether that's like IP plays where like, you know, people are making shirts, people are having coffee, people are selling beers and wine with the IP on them. Like all of these are really important for community building and also like onboarding. You know, it's like marketing. If you get 5,000 holders that love it, they put it as your profile picture, they go around, talk to everybody. You never need to spend another dollar in marketing, right? That's just completely organic, human-based interaction that draws in other like-minded people to your project.
100%. I mean, I literally could not agree more. It's one of the things I mentioned that right before we started this podcast, and I feel like I've never been more connected in life than getting into Web3 and meeting all these people who are super forward thinking. And then you have this common bond with each of them, whether you're part of the same NFT project or whether I've had on the founder of their favorite project, or, you know, long story short, you get in conversation with them and then you find out more about what they're doing in real life, what they've done in their past, you know, things like that. You find these different ways that you can help each other out. Yep. And next thing you know, it leads to these really great relationships and these really cool business ideas and forward-thinking ideas. And that to me is one of the things that like I really look forward to, you know, 5 years from now, seeing how many things started getting built in 2021, 2022, 2023, and then looking how they play out in 2027, 2028, and, you know, and forward, because you put all these, you know, really, really smart people together and you get them thinking, you get them spitballing ideas past each other. Like the things that are going to come from this are going to be crazy. So I'm very much looking forward to it. We got some killer Netflix documentaries that are going to come out in the next 10 years. So
I don't think I found another space that has such a diverse range of people that are all kind of working towards a common goal with different strengths and weaknesses. And people are really open about their strengths and weaknesses in the space. Like obviously I'm a lawyer. I'm happy to provide, like, if we're friends and I know you, like, I'll provide you some, like, I'm not going to do no legal advice, but, like, you know, point you in the right direction. Right. And I know that there's a bunch of other folks who actively engage in the space on a day-to-day basis that would be willing to help folks who they feel, you know, return value appropriately, whether that's one way or another. It could be like making memes. Like some of my best friends in the space, like, are not academic dudes. These guys are just like making memes and having fun. I'm like, wow, this is great. Like, if you can make me memes, I'll help you with whatever is my strength, right? So yeah, it's just amazing, the diversity that we see in the space, and it should be celebrated more.
100%. So, okay, so now let's dive more into SolCasino. So where, I guess, like, did the idea for SolCasino come from, and kind of walk me through the process of when you had the initial idea, what you initially thought SolCasino was going to become, and then, you know, kind of what it's led to today.
Sure, yeah. So I'll start by saying I'm not part of the initial founding group for SolCasino. That was founded in 2021 by Fiopi, who's like got a great reputation in the space as one of the most generous and active kind of founders. And speaking to him and his conversations I've had with him, he identified a gap. He identified a need in the ecosystem, and that was like a licensed, trustworthy platform. And, we do have first mover advantage, I feel, on Solana. Also, the domain SolCasino, like it hits different. But, coming in here, filling that gap with like a proper licensed product in a sea full of unlicensed, like Ponzi's, is what helps us stand head and shoulders above the rest. In terms of what we want it to be, we're super bullish on Solana for all the reasons pretty much the whole reason that we've been talking today. But, we do want to, and we have been doing this, like branching out into a multi-chain offering. Any of the big boys, any of the big crypto blockchains you can connect all the way from like Bitcoin, Ethereum, to like newer chains like Canto, and then even like Litecoin and some of these other like Dino coins you can gamble with, right? We know that we don't want to turn away anybody that's actively participating in the crypto market from using our platform. And so that's kind of how we've been trying to evolve. And there's some different stuff that we do with that. I mean, during the Solana bull run, there was a couple like communities that came out with coins, and like Dust is one of them, right? Boku, like Teo, Graphite, like these big blue chip NFT projects have coins. And so we're able to integrate them in our casino too, where it's like, come give you guys a place to spend these. It gives you your coin a little more utility. Maybe we provide some burn pressure behind that. And then we also provide a space where, people can rally around that, right? People can hold their own kind of games, poker tournaments, stuff like that, go stream to their community. That's kind of been our outreach and kind of how we do things. And moving forward, I'd say for the next like year, 2 years for SolCasino, obviously we're going to keep building out, keep including community coins, keep providing different ways for players to engage and stay active on SolCasino, but also take it a step further, partner with these different DAOs, these blue chips that are very well respected in the space, and provide them a way for them to start generating value for their own DAOs, And I've had some of these conversations with some relevant folks. I'm not going to go and spill the beans right now. You'll see the announcement when it comes out. It'll be super bullish, I think. But yeah, just constantly figuring out ways to branch out, build relationships with other established communities in a way that it's kind of a two-way street where we can provide value to each other.
100%. So how did you end up getting involved with the project to begin with if you
Sure.
weren't on the original founding team?
Yeah, so I was like an active participant in the Solana ecosystem. I was trading NFTs, and with Fiopi, like I was talking to him, and he used to be founder of the Turtles, I think he started. And so we're having a conversation in Turtles, and he's telling me about, some stuff. Oh, they want to maybe do a coin, or maybe want to figure out how to incorporate, or want to do this type of stuff. So I told him, look, I'm a lawyer, right? He goes, okay. So I started doing some legal work for Fiopi. I assisted in them, like kind of acquiring their license, some of these other stuff. And I've just been a daily kind of active SolCasino player for a while. When Fiopi decided to launch SolCasino NFT, he reached out to me and said, look, I need an effective communicator. I need somebody who knows what he's doing in the space. I need somebody that knows how to properly discuss the product and who to discuss it with in a way that is going to keep us from drawing any ire from the regulators, right? And from our licensor. And that's something I have tons of experience with, and I was happy to do that. I jumped at the opportunity because I think it's such a great product. And more importantly, it has the ability to onboard like a whole set of people that would never otherwise participate actively in the crypto and Solana ecosystem. These folks are speculative investors, folks that just hold coins. I've consistently seen them convert well into SolCasino, which then exposes them to a range of other. You do the drop-down menu, I see Graphite on there. I'm like, oh, what the hell is that? Look it up. Oh, it's an NFT project. It's got a coin. Cool. Like, now I know about that. That's kind of like why I was like super excited to work there. And then also like the kind of NFT trading and DeFi stuff is not for everybody. Some people don't understand the value props. Some people get rugged way too often. Some people like go with like their brain instead of their heart, and vice versa, or they go with their stomach maybe. But everyone knows how to like play cards for the most part. Everyone knows how to play casino games. And so this is a rare instance where, we have a 2-year-old product that's cash flow positive, that takes up a good chunk of the attention economy here on Solana. How can we leverage that to provide the most amount of value back to our loyal holders, which is what our NFT collection is. It's like high roller benefits for regular casino stuff that brick and mortar casinos will provide, we're doing that here on Solana, which is really cool. But also, like, how can we get these people to kind of branch out, go into our community, and then go to all of the other communities that occupy Solana, because that's the name of the game, right? Get more people involved, blow this shit wide open.
100%. So one of the common, I guess, arguments against casinos is that, when you look at just purely from a statistical standpoint, anytime anybody walks into a casino, whether it's a brick and mortar, whether it's going on to SolCasino, anytime you're playing these games, statistically, you are more likely to lose than you are to win. Absolutely. I was telling you before we started this podcast, I took a casino management class in college. It was taught by an old pit boss in Vegas, and so he taught us about the odds and everything like that. And I remember at the time just kind of thinking like, oh shit, yeah, you really are. Like the house truly has just the best odds, always. And so even if you're on like a winning streak, there's always a solid chance that you're gonna end up losing at some point, right? And so I guess the opposing argument to casinos is that it's taking money out of the ecosystem, right? And so what would be your counterpoint to that in saying, hey, SolCasino is taking liquidity out of the market, taking liquidity out of the ecosystem? What would be the counter argument to that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid argument, but at the end of the day, people are free to do what they want with their money, and people are going to gamble. Without a licensed and insured option, it's more risky to engage in a casino. So we do feel like that we have some type of corporate responsibility there. And then we do take measures on our platform to help reduce risk for holders, right? And, either working with different sportsbook providers, different casino providers for either poker or some slots, stuff like that, they'll have deposit and withdrawal limits that they implement from their back end that kind of act as risk mitigation. But we also have like a self-exclusionary policy for our casino. Now, everything on SolCasino is on chain. All of our stats are on DApp Radar. You can check it out. Like, good and bad thing, right? Good thing that, everything's on chain. We're using Solana's technology for instant settlement, and then instant kind of withdrawal and deposit, which is like super bullish for like a blockchain. But then the downside is irreversible transactions. And so like some sports bets, irreversible transactions. The self-exclusionary policy is an irreversible transaction that occurs on the blockchain.
Can you explain what that is real quick for people who don't know what that means?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you're playing on our platform, like there's a couple of steps that you need to take before you can actively start wagering. The first one is that you need to sign kind of an agreement that you are over the age of 18. The other one is that you're not in a prohibited jurisdiction. And if you are in a prohibited jurisdiction, the games will be grayed out. You won't be able to play them, right? You'll be able to play a couple games that are allowed here in the States. And the States is an example of a prohibited jurisdiction. And then like if you're not in a prohibited jurisdiction, then you'll be able to start playing. But self-exclusionary policy is if you think that you have a problem gambling, you can go and you can go to like the settings tab at SolCasino, and you can make it so that you can't access any part of the website for a specific amount of time. And it's anywhere from like 1 week, 1 year to like permanent self-exclusion. And once this smart contract, once this like settlement or once this transaction's made for self-exclusion, there's no way for us to get around it. And so we've seen people like come in, they say, oh, I realized I was losing too much money. I did a month, but I really need to get back in. Can you let me get back in? I'm like, fuck no. And it's not just an us policy. That's like a international kind of compliance measure that most Web3 casinos and all licensed Web3 casinos and regular internet casinos do in good faith. So we do have these policies in place. Unfortunately, like some people do it permanently and they lose some of their NFTs they got staked on our platform. They're getting rake back bonus and stuff like that. And there's really not much we can do about it at the moment. It will require us to alter our core smart contract. And, it's not, we wouldn't have the self-exclusion policies in place if we didn't plan to respect them after they were done. So.
Yeah, no. And the whole casino space is very interesting because, I've grown up, I love sports gambling. I think I was like 13 the first time I went on like a European gambling site. Nice. And those sites were so sketchy. You'd put money in there. You never really knew if you were going to actually get your money out if you won. And it was incredibly sketchy. You'd get a check from some random ass company in like usually Canada, and you'd have like 24 hours to cash that thing or it'd bounce. And it was the sketchiest thing of all time. And so the when I started hearing about SolCasino and everything like that, the fact that you guys do everything on chain, the fact that there's instant withdrawals and things like that was something that I was like, hey, whether somebody's a fan of casinos or not, the reality of it is casinos are not going anywhere. People are always going to gamble. California, for example, sports gambling is not legal, but yet California has one of the highest rates of sports gambling in the entire country, and it's because people just bet illegally, right? Like, you tell people they can't do something and they want to do it, they're still going to do it, right?
Absolutely.
And so to me, I'm like, if you're making a way for people to do that safely, whether you agree with it or not, once again, people are still going to do it. So create a safe way for them to do it, and make it where if they do win, that they don't have to worry about their money coming out, right? And that was something, once again, when you're gambling on these really sketchy European websites and stuff like that, there were a lot of times I just never got the money that I was rightfully owed, right? And so those are the things where I'm like, hey, once again, whether people are a fan of it or not, you should create a safe way for people to do it. If somebody does have a problem, there should be a way for them to stop themselves from being able to play. I think that's great. And then you and I were having a conversation before we even started this episode. One of the ways that sports books and lotteries and things like that exist in the U.S. is that those casinos are usually required to do certain things for the overall community, right? And whether it's, being heavily taxed and having those tax dollars go to local schools or going to community initiatives or things like that, there's a lot of things that those casinos or lotteries have to do in order to kind of better the local area, right? So what do you envision for Soul Casino, whether it's something that you guys have already done or something that you want to do in the future to actively benefit the overall, whether it's Solana ecosystem or just the overall, crypto and NFT ecosystem in general? What do you think Soul Casino can do to kind of help out the local community, kind of like the brick and mortar businesses have to do here?
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. Like, a lot of that is just kind of bolstering the tax base. You'll see casinos, same thing with cannabis and same thing with sex. These regulations that are coming out here in the States are all because it increases the jurisdiction's tax bottom line at the end of the year. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff that we can do at Soul Casino, a ton of stuff we do have planned coming out here. And won't release any names, won't release any projects, but in the spirit of giving back to our community, and that is the Solana community, particularly different protocols and folks who are looking to build on the blockchain and further our shared vision of what kind of equity and what the blockchain should represent. We can take all of we can take all of our, our positioning, the amount of eyes we have on ourselves, the market share that we have, and the money that we make through our casino. We're able to support builders in the ecosystem. And how that looks, it looks in a variety of different ways. But I think most importantly, it's reaching out and being able to uplift people who have a skill, have a talent, are contributing every single day to the ecosystem in a positive way, in a positive light, and that are building towards something that's bigger than them and something greater to make the ecosystem better for everybody. We're happy to work with these people, and, we would go even as far as and we talked about this a little bit earlier, and it was even as far as flying out people to different type of Solana events. We go to these things, and for us, it's networking. We were able to meet people, meet some of the folks we have meetings with and stuff like that, but it'd be proper life-changing for a developer or somebody that, is a 1 or 2 man shop that's kind of building something coming off the ground, and they need some eyeballs, they need some connections. I think it'd be really interesting. The other thing is just providing grants and working with these different builders to help kind of forward their business, and in return have kind of a good faith commitment or look back towards us. And this is just a mutually beneficial relationship, right? Because now we have an advocate who is building a different protocol that is able to return value to us at Soul Casino, and we're able to provide them the value they need to kind of achieve the thing that they're working towards.
100%. Yeah, and I really do think that part of casinos, once again, I understand the people who are against it, whatever, but I'm like, man, if they can do something to help the local area, right? How can you be opposed to that, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can't tell somebody else how to spend their money. So if you're against casinos, obviously no one's putting a gun to your head and saying you got to go and spend a bunch of money at a casino. If you don't want to, by all means, don't. But if people have a safe way to do it, and then that casino does something to better the local community, that's a beautiful thing, and that's something that we should be happy about, because if it's not legal there, or if there's not these regulatory or certain things that are existing there, then there's no obligation to do those sort of things. And so if in that instance it's not really benefiting anybody, but if there's, especially when it comes to the lottery and things like that, they do a lot to help out the local school systems, and I've seen they've done a lot to help out the roads in Michigan where I grew up, and certain things like that are heavily needed. And so once again, whether somebody's for it or against it or whatever, if those entities are doing things to help out the local area, that's a win-win. And once again, we need those dollars. And if somebody's willing to say, hey, you know what, I've got disposable income, I want to gamble this amount of money, that's their choice, and they have that ability. And then once again, if you have those casinos and lotteries and things like that are doing things to help out the local area, it becomes a win-win in that situation. So
absolutely, couldn't agree more. And then I know in my personal capacity, I do I've always kind of had the desire to be an educator. Like even when I was young, I kind of wanted to be a teacher. I remember telling like my dad's friend I wanted to be a teacher. He started laughing at me and said, "You're not going to make any difference being a teacher." But like this is something that is I have such a passion for, and I find this in Web3 that I'm able to help people and uplift them and provide them the skills they need to really make it in Web3. And that's just like not just being a speculative investor coming from a VC. It's like there's tons of different peripheral businesses and peripheral jobs that you can have in the crypto industry. Even like marketing, like social media marketing, like all this type of stuff pays well, and it's only going to continue to grow as the ecosystem and as blockchain grows. But that's all education, right? And I know like one of the things that I do as an aside, and we're going to be doing over the summer here, in partnership with the Jackie Robinson Foundation, is a financial literacy program, right? And I'm kind of working on the crypto best practices and crypto security portion of that. But it's for high school kids. It's like shit that I wish they taught me about crypto when I was young. Like I'm a little too old. Maybe it wasn't a thing back then. I wish they taught me about finances in general, like how to do your taxes, how to save money properly. Not like the don't drink coffee every day, save $5 a day, but like how to actually make a difference in your portfolio over the long term. I think these are severely lacking, and I'm just doing everything I can in the space to help address that.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. I think that's that's the sort of stuff that we need to do. Is like as I'm 30 years old now, and like if there's anything I can help do to help out the younger generation, like I want to do that, right? Absolutely. And so it's kind of like I feel like it's our moral obligation to, as we get older, to help the younger generations come up, and then hoping that they do the same for future generations that come underneath them, right? Yeah. And so I love that. So. Okay, so another thing is you guys recently launched your NFT collection. Yep. What was the idea behind that? Why did you guys decide to launch an NFT collection, and what are the goals of that NFT collection? Yeah,
I mean, it just comes down to it comes down to like awarding our active users, and then we look at consumer retention over the long term. There's a lot of brands and businesses that are getting in the space, and we talked about how we don't think NFTs are going to look the same way today as they do in 10 years from now, and I think where NFTs are going and where brands and businesses want them to go is like membership rewards models. And so you have a product that is, driving value. You have a group of people that is regularly using the product. How can we provide as much hard value in return? And there's a couple different ways to do this. Like you need to have a cash flow positive business in order to get this done. And then it's just like, and I'll hark back on like the Starbucks model where it's like, these guys are buying Starbucks. They're already giving you the points. Now the points are on chain, and then you don't know you're using NFT. You don't use the blockchain, but you're getting like free coffee every once in a while that you go. And like, this is like actual value that people understand, that people like. And I think that there's a bunch of other groups that I've talked to, and in my discussions with like, so I do work with Mojito as well. And Mojito's group is like all about working with big multinational brands on like long tail consumer, like or long tail engagement rewards platforms. And, they got big clients, like they have Milwaukee Bucks is one of the folks that they work with. And that NFT collection is like, you can go to the Deer Square, you can go to like the town square for where the basketball games are, and get like a free t-shirt on opening night. And like, you can get a free beer when you go, and like this type of stuff, right? That brings people to the place. It gives them a reason to go. It gives them something free, a little sprinkle on top. They're going to stay there. They're going to spend more money. They're going to be more engaged anyways, right? So how can we just essentially give a nod and provide value to them in a way that separates them from the rest of the folks who maybe don't know about this? And then like you provide other stuff like you do IRL meetups and stuff like that, different type of IRL utilities. And then there's all types of digital access utilities that you can provide. And that's what we plan on doing with SolCasino. We've already seen already like high roller style rewards. We do have like a share component and a USDC farming component to our platform, which, people like. That's definitely not the focus of it's almost like a peripheral value issue, but it's definitely not the focus of our community. And where we're going to go over the next, I'd say 6 months to a year is continue to refine that community thesis where if we can have folks that are coming on a regular basis to use our platform, like if you're not using SolCasino, you're not getting max value from the NFT. And we set that up on purpose. Like we want people to be active in our community, to help each other, and then to like host and organize around our product. And if we can continue to drive people back, I mean, that's the name of the game for any business, is recurring. And so, I mean, we found that to be the most efficient way. And then look, there's just a ton of stuff that we can provide from the casino specific related utilities to people, and it only makes sense to give it to our holders.
Do you think it's possible to create, because you mentioned community a few times there, do you think it's possible to create a community around a casino? Because I feel like, one of the things that we've seen IRL is currently there's a battle between FanDuel, DraftKings, Penn, and some of these other big casinos out here that are all trying to essentially outspend each other to essentially drive each other out of business, right? And so you're seeing it often where you're seeing big announcements. Pat McAfee, before he just went over to ESPN, he had a huge deal with FanDuel, right? And so some of those payments are a little crazy, but they're trying to outcompete each other. They're trying to get everybody's viewer retention and everything like that, consumer retention. And so I know it's a little bit different in the crypto and Web3 world, but do you think it's possible to create a huge community around a casino? And do you, I guess, look at some of these businesses in the U.S. in terms of FanDuel, DraftKings, Penn, and kind of look at how they're doing it, and I guess take inspiration from them in some ways? Kind of give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is absolutely necessary for any casino to kind of, if they're going to have an NFT collection, build a proper community around there. I think that it is possible too, and I think we're doing a really good job of it actually. Some of the folks that we talk to that are part of our community, they come in there and they don't talk about gambling. They're talking about sports, or they're talking about some other casino peripheral access, or they're sharing pictures of food, or they're sharing pictures of them to go on dune buggy racing. It's a bunch of cool stuff. And the way that we can do that is, and yes, I do look at the FanDuels and I do look at the DraftKings that put finances more than anything. They pay out the biggest to influencers, and then all you see from the influencer is $1 million bet, $1 million bet, $1 million bet, right? Which is not $1 million bet. They give rebates and, they pay people flat rate. But that doesn't do much from an engagement perspective. That's cool, I watched Drake live stream something, whatever. So we're taking a little bit of a different approach. And we've seen some other groups on Solana and Ethereum and Web3 that really rally around a specific game, use poker as an example. And they have weekly recurring poker games, and this gives people a reason. They set an alarm, they'll come every Tuesday at 7:00 to play cards, right? And then they start to get to know the people they're playing cards with, and they build these friendships and relationships. And it turns into a social aspect, a social club. You want to come and you want to show up, and you don't want to miss. And if you miss a week, next week they're like, hey, where were you last week, man? Everyone kind of bar where everyone knows your name. And so we're kind of taking that approach where we have specific white label, or we have specific in-house games that we provide at SolCasino. And we're continuing to build out this suite of offerings that allow individuals, both within our community and within existing Solana communities, to build these type of clubs, say a poker club, for example, to come together and have that personal relationship with each other. Because when you view it like player versus house, it's always going to be an us versus them situation. But when it turns into me versus you versus him versus her, and we're all sitting at the same table, and we're all in Discord live chatting with each other while we're playing, there's a certain level of accountability that goes into there. And then there's also a certain level of commitment and community building that just is a natural result of that constant kind of contact. So those are the things that we're driving towards. And that's one of the reasons that FIOP wanted to bring me in here to work with SolCasino, was to be a community driver.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think there's other ways that you can do cool things around that, because you mentioned the games aspect. We saw a few weeks ago, there were the Warriors and Lakers were playing each other, right? And Frank DeGod's obviously a huge Lakers fan, has gone to a bunch of the games. And then there's also a lot of people up in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, who are big in the Web3 space. And so there were constantly, I felt killer comments coming from each other, right? And there was, people, diehard Lakers fans, diehard Warriors fans, each arguing their opposing side and things like that. And that to me was really, really fun. And I feel from the SolCasino aspect of things, if you guys elevated those conversations within your community and made it where, whether people are gambling on those games or not, but giving them a place to discuss those games, I think is always a really fun thing to do. Because I think, one of the things as we get older is we sometimes lose the ability to banter about certain things, like certain games or, whatever. NBA Finals game last night. You don't see your friends as often as we get older. Lives get busy, things like that. But I feel like the one benefit of Web3 is it gives us this place to find people who are also watching that game, or also watching that horse race, or also watching that poker match, or whatever, and it gives them a place to discuss these things. And I think that is where I can see the community really developing is, once again, whether somebody's putting a huge wager on that game or not, giving people a place to discuss these games, giving them a way to discuss, poker strategy or blackjack strategy or things along those lines. I feel like that's where I see the community really developing, because we all just like having fun. And when you can have fun and discuss it with your friends, there's nothing more fun than that.
Absolutely. And that's like that's kind of bit like provide a forum for the folks, right? That's not like straight PvP like Twitter. That's cool. People can go in the comment section of like what PFF talks or whatever and just do that, but it's not really engaging, and you're not really having a back and forth, and there's not really any type of accountability or reliability with the folks that you come in on a daily basis with. So
100%. So what for right now, like what do you want to see happen with SolCasino? Like what would you view as a success like a year from now in terms of literally anything with the project? But I know a lot can happen within a year, but is it, more cross-chain expansion? Is it, like what do you want to see SolCasino become, and, and where would you like to see it a year from now?
Yeah, so I think my 2-year kind of outlook on this, and I'll give you a proper 2-year on it, is like, I think we're number 7 or number 8 for Web3 casinos, simply too low for me. I think it's 7 spots too low. So I'd like to see us gun up on the board a little bit. And in order to do that, we need to take a couple different steps. The first step is we're doing a website kind of UI overhaul. We can expect that to be released here soon. That's alpha, by the way. And then 2 other pieces of alpha, like, we're licensed in Curacao. We're going to go for a US license. We're going to go for a UK license. And this is going to expand our reach significantly. And going back to the promising things that you can't necessarily deliver, this is absolutely something we can deliver. And, in my connections and field-based connections, some people we work with, I have extensive connections in Vegas, in the casino industry, brick and mortar style casinos, VC groups that own, they only have a small amount of physical licenses and they actually come with a digital license now for a lot of these groups. Like I'm able to kind of work with these guys and leverage that and leverage their experience and their know-how and their Vegas kind of industry knowledge to help kind of elevate our platform into something that, you're able to play here without a VPN, right? And you're able to play in the UK without a VPN. And so really excited for that. I think that's going to help bust it wide open. But at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. I want to see us jump the board a little bit and take out some of these competitors.
Do you see now? So one of the things that's big in the U.S. are what are called skill-based games. Yeah. So you have like Prize Picks, you have, I think it's Champions Round, you have DraftKings in terms of their DFS aspect of things. Same thing with FanDuel, where like I can't legally bet on the NBA Finals game in California, but what I can do is do a DraftKings contest where I'm picking players, and then based off my combination of players, I can compete against somebody else, right? That is something that's legal here because they consider it skill-based gaming, right? Same thing with Prize Picks, where I can essentially pick a group of props. I can't bet one prop, but I can if I put multiple props together, they consider that skill-based gaming. So that is legal here. Do you guys see yourself doing something within that where you would basically be able to have, I guess, a legal entity there that, is kind of a little bit more broad? And I would assume a little bit easier to get than a casino license.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself doing something along those lines?
Absolutely. And that's something we would probably leverage our partners to work with and establish. Right now, our sportsbook, like we have the same sports provider as Stake, which is like another big kind of Web3 casino, and they currently don't offer that functionality. And it's something we would definitely be interested in doing in-house. Like we would love to have that in-house, and if not possible, then we'd love to have that as like a really close in our kind of vest product. Yeah, absolutely.
This has been awesome. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and it's. When you kind of ran the idea past me of doing a podcast, I was excited for this because I was like, man, I feel like, this whole like casino gaming and Web3 gaming and casinos and everything like that is this like, I feel like this thing nobody really like talks about, and I was like, it'll be kind of cool to bring some legitimacy to it. And so, I know we've touched on the legality of all of this a little bit, but can you just real quick, just briefly sum up, how is this all legally operated and like, operating out of the carousel and stuff like that? Explain that a little bit for people who just don't understand, once again, how you can legally do this.
Yeah, sure. So we are licensed and insured in Curacao. We are affiliated with Al Gaming, which is like our parent company. They help with our casino provider, the games that you're able to access. We are able to operate in the majority of jurisdictions around the world, with the exception of the United States and UK. That's why we're so keen on, kind of breaking into these markets. And then, we have kind of geo restrictions for folks that are inside of prohibited jurisdictions where, they're not able to access our games. And so that's like a CYA kind of cover our ass measure. It helps us remain compliant. And yeah,
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, okay, well, hey, to wrap this up, I guess whether it's somebody talking about, I guess we'll wrap it up in two different ways. So, one, why should somebody be bullish on just SolCasino in general, not just the NFT project, but SolCasino in general? Why should somebody be bullish about you guys?
Because we're not going to stop until we're number one on the charts, and we know what it takes to get there, right? We know that we need to have a focus on building a strong community. We know we need to have a focus on attracting investors from other blockchains. And all of this directly benefits Solana. As long as Solana is around as a blockchain and people are using the chain, SolCasino is going to be here. And we're going to be operational. And we're going to be a part of this community and a big advocate for Solana.
What do you think is going to take you guys to number one? Like, what do you think that you have to do in order to get to number one in terms of like, obviously, I understand hey, if we just get more people utilizing it, we're going to bring more money in, we're going to have more active users, things like that. That's kind of I get that aspect. But in terms of like, what would be your pitch to the Solana community as to like why they should look at SolCasino and like be like, this is the SolCasino or the, just crypto casino that I want to use? What is your pitch to them? And like, what are you going to do to capture their attention?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we just have our forum on Solana being hosted here just makes the most amount of sense for many of these casinos. Instant deposit, instant withdrawal, and settlement on chain. These are all like incredible use cases for Solana as a blockchain. And we will always be advocating and we will always use Solana as a settlement layer for this. Now, what do I think it takes to really kick it up a notch and kind of break out of where we are out of this kind of holding pattern is like continuously driving innovation on our platform that makes people want to come back. And there's a bunch of different ways that we can do that. I think chiefly among them is providing things that people want, providing utilities and games that people are going to want to play, and then finding ways for new investors who aren't steeped in Web3 culture, that are maybe buying coins from Uniswap or Binance, the ability to play on our platform. And we've recently rolled out, you can create an account and you could deposit funds using an email address, and you could deposit funds from centralized exchanges now, from like Coinbase and Binance. We saw an uptick in users off that alone. People don't need to set up a Phantom wallet or a MetaMask wallet in order to start playing on our platform. We think that's really nice. And then we have a couple other things that we have rolled out, and I can't speak publicly about them right now, but you'll probably see them in the next month or two, with regards to some of the people we're going to be working with, some of the places you're going to see SolCasino start popping up at, and some of the different type of utilities are going to be rolling out for our holders. Super excited.
There we go. Okay, so speaking of holders then, why should they be excited about the future of SolCasino, people who are holding the NFT?
Absolutely. These guys are our most valued customers, and we're always going to continue to drive as much hard value as we can to these people directly, right? And like I mentioned earlier, you're not getting the most out of your NFT if you're not an active user of our platform. Obviously, there's still reasons that you can invest in us. Maybe you're bullish on the thesis that casino gambling is going to be around for a little while. Maybe you're just interested in Solana and you're like, cool, this makes a lot of sense. But there's a ton of casino specific utilities that are going to drive back to our kind of 5,000 holders or our 5,000 NFTs and like get in the game. Like you want the most type of return, like got to start using our platform. And this is going to, we think, kind of change and revolutionize some of the, especially on Solana, some of the different ways that companies decide to provide value to their holders. Super excited for some of the stuff we have planned, and yeah, looking forward to it.
From a personal perspective, and this is the last question for you, but from a personal perspective, what inspires you right now? What motivates you right now? What do you want like yourself to to be looked at, or goals that you have for yourself? If we're talking again, let's just use a year as the horizon here. What do you want to say for yourself? What do you want your goals to be in the next year for yourself?
Yeah, I think my goals for myself align well with my goals and intentions in the blockchain space, in the crypto space. I'd like to continue to push for more realistic, more reasonable regulations, and I'll do everything. And I'm based in New York, so I try to do everything that I can in the New York community from the ground level. Maybe taking a step up and kind of being able to work with some of these other legislators in different jurisdictions to provide like common sense crypto policy and regulation. And then I also would like to see, and I hope I'm playing a role in this, is educating the next, and this is going to sound cliche, but like educating the next million people or the next 100 million people going to come into the ecosystem in a way that doesn't leave them burned or doesn't leave them confused, and gives them a great experience and a reason to come back. And like the majority of times is not money, you know, like if we're able to provide these different use cases that make quality of life for a lot of people better, then it's going to become very sticky. And so, yeah, I would definitely like to be within the next year, kind of continue to push forward on these on these different projects and things that I'm working on that all have to do with like bringing in new people, educating them in the right way, and having them be like effective, positive Web3 community members.
Well, hey, man, I'm looking forward to it. And I love the things that you're doing to educate the youth on the blockchain and things like that. And yeah, just excited to see where you take this, man. It's a fun position to be in. And I know a lot of people are enjoying, playing on SolCasino.
Absolutely.
And I wish I could join, but I'm here out in California.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I love seeing what you're doing. Excited to see where you guys take the project and everything like that. But for people who want to reach out to you, drop your socials. Where can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. You can holler at me on Twitter at 0xTG3. And that's the only social media I got, so hit me up.
There we go. Well, hey, man, I appreciate this. This was fun, and I know we'll be running it back at some point. We'll talk about everything that you guys are doing, and it's always exciting to see where these conversations go and looking back at it a year from now and kind of seeing everything that you guys have done and everything like that. So, but, man, I appreciate it. This was a fun conversation, and I'm, once again, very much looking forward to seeing where things go with you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Hospitality has been great so far, and great studio you got here, like killer place. And, yeah, thanks again for taking the time, man. It's been a great conversation.
No problem, bro. Well, hey, everybody else, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll chat with you guys soon, and yeah, talk soon.
Cool. Thanks.
See you guys.